Brunstetter, the assistant web editor of BookPage, and today I'm talking to Wanda Brunstetter about The Journey, her new book which came out in early April and is the first book in the Brothers Kentucky series. Wanda is considered to be the queen of Amish fiction, and we are here today at a signing at Lifeway Christian Bookstore in Franklin, Tennessee, and I'm so excited to be talking to you today. So
It's my pleasure.
thank you. First of all, could you just tell us what The Journey is about?
The Journey is actually a spin-off from one of my earlier series. The Storekeeper's Daughter was the first book in the Daughters of Lancaster County. And it involved the kidnapping of an Amish child. And the children from that series are now grown up. So one of the children is an identical twin. And he has a little bit of trouble in that he feels he's in his brother's shadow, always comparing himself. The other brother, the twin, Timothy, is very successful. And so Titus feels like he's kind of a flub-up. And coupled with that and the fact that his girlfriend has just dumped him, left the Amish faith, moved to California, he is heartbroken and feels like he has to get out of Lancaster County and have a new start. He thinks it's the only way.
Connie, call 304, please. Connie, call
His
304.
mother is
Thank you.
devastated, like any mother would be when her child leaves home, especially a couple states away. And so I wanted to bring that out and show how Amish families deal with it when their children leave home.
Well, speaking of The Journey, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your journey as an author and how you came to write Amish fiction. I know that your husband was raised in the Mennonite church.
Correct.
So,
And one of his Mennonite friends worked with an Amish man. You know, the Amish can't own vehicles once they join the church, so this Mennonite man owned the vehicles for his paint contracting business. So we actually met our first Amish couple through our Mennonite friend, Walt. And when he took us there and we sat out on the picnic table drinking lemonade and visiting with the Amish family, I saw the Amish in a totally different way than I had ever seen them before. I saw them as real people, people like you and I. And when we left that day, I said to my husband, when I write my first novel, I want it to be about the Amish, because I want people to understand them the way we do. And from that point on, everywhere we went, we made friends with Amish people. And now, every community that I write about, we have Amish friends. And that has really helped me to be able to understand them even better and to portray them in the correct light.
well, do you think that there are any, I know that you're kind of an expert on the Amish community, are there any misconceptions about the Amish that you hope to correct in your books?
Definitely. We were talking about this yesterday. I had a book signing at a library, and people were asking me some questions about the Amish that showed me that there are misconceptions. And one of them is that a lot of people think the Amish religion is more like a cult, and that they're not really Christians. And I clarified that in the respect that not maybe all Amish are Christians, just like not all English people are Christians. But there are many that are. And a lot of them are now beginning to study the Bible more and to talk about their religion more. There was a time when people in the Amish community kept everything to themselves. They thought, I think they thought that it was prideful to talk about their beliefs and their own, their own conversion. And now they're beginning to see that it's not really prideful, but that it's sharing the gospel with other people.
Well, what about the Amish lifestyle do you think has attracted so many readers?
I think it's the fact that the Amish, their priorities, for one thing, are God first, family second, and they are not hung up on things. It's not, they are not always trying to get ahead and acquire more. It's about relationships, and I think we Englishers crave that. Deep in our hearts, that's what we really truly want. We want to have relationships that are meaningful with people, and we want to put our emphasis on helping others instead of getting ahead of your neighbor, and just simplifying, doing things that are more simple, growing gardens, hanging laundry out, spending less time in front of the TV, just things that just get you back to nature.
Well, this is a love story in The Journey, so what do you think the Amish setting brings to a love story?
I think it's, for one thing, it's a different type of love story because we may not always see the Amish as being the romantics. Somebody asked me once, you know, are the Amish really romantic? And I shared this with one of my Amish friends who's actually in a wheelchair. He's partially crippled. And he said, oh, well, of course we're romantic. How else would we ever get a wife? And I just chuckled when he said that because it's true. They are romantic, but they're not. They don't show it outwardly to the world like we might. You don't usually see Amish couples holding hands, unless they're young people in their Rumspringa, which is their running around time. So they're a little bit more subdued about it, but it's still there. And I think the fact that there's just something romantic, at least there is for me, about the horse and buggy, and going for a ride in a courting buggy. You know, what could be any better than that?
Back to basics.
Yeah.
Well, the girl, one of the love interests in the journey is Suzanne, and I believe this is Suzanne on the cover.
Yes.
And she is kind of an unconventional girl.
She is.
And I was wondering if you identify with any of your characters, or if, like Suzanne, you have any unconventional talents.
Well, I have one that's a little bit different. I'm a ventriloquist.
I read that. I was eager to talk about that.
Yeah. And I used to repair dolls before I became an author. I had a doll hospital, and that was a little bit different. Things that somebody might not think of me as doing. But really, Suzanne is not so much the character that I felt connected to in the story as much as it is Titus's mother, Fanny, because of how she dealt with Titus leaving home. Our daughter left home shortly after she got married, and it just about broke my heart because we were very, very close as she was growing up. But I, unlike Fanny, realized that it was her life and she was now a married woman, and I had to accept it. And I tried not to be clingy, or I tried not to even let her know how much I was really hurting having her move away. Whereas Fanny kept constantly hovering over Titus and bugging him about the fact that, can't you move back? Do you really need to go? Even after he went and things started to go wrong, he started having some problems. She was like encouraging him to move back.
Well, you said that you and your husband know Amish families in the different communities where your books take place, and I was wondering is there a particular family or event that inspired this story of them moving from Lancaster down to Kentucky?
Yeah, actually there is. So we have some Amish friends, some very close Amish friends in Indiana, and all of their kids lived around them. They have, I think, 7 girls and 2 boys, and they're so close. The sisters are so close. And the husband of one of the daughters lost his job in one of the factories up there in northern Indiana. And he could not find anything, and they were going to lose everything if he didn't get a job. And so his family, who is in Oklahoma, invited him to come there because they did have a job for him. So this young couple and their children had to move to Oklahoma. And I watched how it affected the family. And I mean, they let her go with their blessing and good wishes, but they were hurting. And the mother shared with me that every time the daughter comes home, they go through the grief all over again. And she said sometimes it's almost worse when she's here because we have to say goodbye all over. And so thinking about that, and then wanting to do a spin-off from my previous series, I just came up with the idea. And having been to Kentucky and seeing the rural area there, I thought this is the perfect setting for this story.
Well, speaking of saying goodbye, I think a lot of readers, when you get attached to characters, it's hard to say goodbye at the end of the book, but luckily this is book 1 of a series, so
you don't have to say goodbye for a little bit.
It's just, and the second book is out in September, so really not long from now.
Right.
So what's next for the Kentucky Brothers series?
It'll be called The Healing, book 2. Book 3 is The Struggle, which will be out in 2012. And I'll be dealing with 2 of the other brothers in the Fisher family.
Well, are there any takeaways or lessons that you hope your readers take from this book?
I think probably the biggest thing I would like them to realize and to see is that it's okay for married kids or grown kids to go out on their own, and that it's okay for parents to grieve over this, but to get a good perspective of it and to realize the kids, they're out of the nest. You know, it's time to let go, and that you can still have a close relationship. Doesn't matter where your kids live. And my daughter and I are still close, despite the fact that she lives in another state. So I think that's probably the big thing. And the other thing is realizing that siblings who often feel like they're living in the shadow of one of their siblings, they can find themselves if they don't compare themselves. That's a big key, is don't compare, make your own way. Find out what you're good at and do the best you can.
Well, just as a fun or silly closing, so after listening to this interview, if our readers are interested in seeing your ventriloquist skills, are there videos of you performing, or where do you perform?
Actually, I perform quite a bit when I go into schools and do speaking, especially for the Amish kids. They love it. We have not actually videoed any of them yet. We were talking about that the other day, and my grandson loves to put videos together. And so he said, "Grandma, you've got to video yourself with with the ventriloquist figure. We'll get it up on YouTube." So that's kind of a project we're thinking of. And so I'll be using one of my puppets that's actually dressed in Amish clothes.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Wanda, for talking to BookPage. And you can read a review of the journey on BookPage.com.